The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make every species feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Light came from 100 different sources, each one chosen to comfort a different kind of alien eye. The floor was made of stone from a dead world, polished smooth by 1,000,000 feet over 10,000 years. Ambassador Sung walked across this floor with steady steps. His aide Park walked 2 steps behind him. She carried a tablet with all their notes, though she had already memorized everything on it. Around them, representatives from 40 different species watched from their platforms. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some breathed gases that would kill a human in seconds. Sung had learned to ignore all of it. 20 years of diplomacy had taught him that aliens, no matter how strange they looked, were not so different from humans. They wanted safety. They wanted resources. They wanted respect. The trick was finding a way to give everyone what they wanted without anyone dying. Today, that trick might not be enough. The ambassador stood on the central platform. His name was, and he was not built for diplomacy. His species looked like insects grown to the size of bears. 4 arms ended in claws that could cut through steel. His mouth parts clicked when he spoke, and the translation device turned those clicks into words that dripped with contempt. The human colonies in the outer rim sit on resources that belong to the Dominion, said. We have tolerated this theft long enough. You will remove your people from these worlds, or we will remove them ourselves. Sung reached the speaker's circle and waited for the murmurs to fade. He felt tense behind him, but he kept his own body relaxed. Tension was a weapon that could be used against you. Ambassador, he said, the colonies you mention have existed for over 80 years. 3 generations of humans have been born there. They are home to 4 million people. This is not our concern, replied. They need those resources. Your people are in the way. Council Arbiter raised one webbed hand. She was old, even by the standards of her long-lived species. Her skin had faded from bright blue to pale gray, and her voice was soft but carried through the hall. Ambassador, do you have a counter-proposal? Sung nodded. I have several. First, we offer a trade agreement. Human technology for raw materials at rates favorable to the Dominion. Second, we propose shared mining rights in the asteroid belt of the system. Third, we offer to help develop colony worlds that currently lack the infrastructure for resource extraction. He paused, letting the offers sink in. Around the hall, other ambassadors exchanged glances. These were generous terms, more than generous. Mandibles clicked in what the translator rendered as laughter. You offer us crumbs when we can take the whole meal. The fleet numbers in the thousands. Your defense forces are small and scattered. You have no allies who would risk war for you. He turned to address the whole council. Look at them. They do not fight. They talk. They offer. They beg. This is a species of prey. His hand tightened on her tablet. Sung felt the insult land, but he did not let it show on his face. Instead, he did something that surprised the entire hall. He smiled. Ambassador, he said, may I share something with the council, a brief history lesson. Waved one claw dismissively, if it amuses you. Sung turned to face the assembled species. 250 years ago, humans had never left their home planet. We were alone, fighting only each other, and we were very, very good at it. He touched a control on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared above the central platform. Images began to flow. Cities burning, fields covered with bodies, weapons that split atoms and poisoned the earth for generations. In 1 century alone, we killed over 100 million of our own kind. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire world. We came close to using them more than once. The images shifted to show recovery efforts, peace treaties, the slow rebuilding of shattered nations. We learned. It took us a long time and cost us more than I can describe, but we learned. He turned back to, we do not avoid war because we are weak. We avoid war because we understand what it truly costs. We have looked into that darkness, and we do not wish to return to it. Stepped closer. Even through the translation device, his contempt was clear. Pretty words, but words do not stop armies. Words do not hold territory. If you understood strength, you would not waste time talking. Arbiter spoke again. The council must make a decision. Ambassador, what are your terms? Simple, said. 90 days. The humans will evacuate their colonies in 90 days, or our fleet will remove them. Every ship, every building, every human, gone. The hall fell silent. Sung felt the weight of 40 species watching him, waiting to see what the humans would do. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked relieved that they were not the ones being threatened. Ambassador said gently, "Do you wish to respond?" Sung looked at for a long moment. Then he bowed his head slightly. The United Human Federation acknowledges the Council's decision. We will take the 90 days to consider our options. Made a sound of triumph. You see, they submit, as prey always does. But something in Sung's calm unsettled the other ambassadors. A species that had just been given an ultimatum should show fear or anger or desperation. Sung showed none of these things. He simply turned and walked away, his aide following close behind. They were halfway to the exit when spoke in a low voice. "Sir, are we really going to evacuate 4 million people?" Sung did not slow his steps. "No." "Then what are we going to do?" They passed through the great doors and into the corridor beyond. Only when they were truly alone did Sung answer. "We gave them a warning," he said. "We showed them our history. We offered them everything they could want without bloodshed. They did not listen. Waited. Now we prepare," Sung continued. "We prepare for something they have never faced, a human war." His voice was calm but had worked with him long enough to hear what lay beneath. Not anger, not fear, something colder, something patient. "Contact Admiral," he said. "Tell him they have made their choice, and tell him to dust off the old files, the ones from before we went to the stars." He paused. "The ones that taught us why we stopped fighting in the first place." Nodded and began typing on her tablet. Behind them, the great hall of the Galactic Council continued its business, unaware that the galaxy had just changed. They thought they had won. They thought humans would run. They had no idea what they had just started. The message reached Earth in 7 minutes. By the 8th minute, Admiral was reading it in his office in Seoul. By the 10th minute, he was on a secure call with the Joint Defense Council. By the 15th minute, humanity began to wake up. Was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that rarely showed emotion. He had commanded ships in 3 border conflicts and had never lost a vessel under his direct control. More importantly, he had spent the last decade studying every species in the known galaxy, learning how they fought and why. The he knew would be easy to predict. They were dangerous because of their numbers and their aggression, not because of their tactics. They swarmed. They overwhelmed. They had conquered 12 species this way, and they expected humans to be the 13th. They were wrong. "How long until their fleet can reach the outer rim?" asked General Moon Jin, commander of ground forces. "If they follow their usual patterns, 6 weeks, replied. "But intelligence suggests they are already mobilizing. They may not wait the full 90 days. "Then neither will we." The planning began immediately. Ships that had been scattered across human space received new orders. Factories that made civilian goods began making military equipment. Scientists who had worked on peaceful research were asked very specific questions about very dangerous applications. None of this happened in panic. There were no riots, no protests, no demands for surrender. Humans had done this before, not in space but on Earth a long time ago. The knowledge of how to prepare for war was written into their history, passed down through generations. They had hoped never to use it again. Hope, it seemed, was not enough. On the colony world Haven 7, Captain Shin Bai received her orders at dawn. She stood on the roof of the defense headquarters, watching the sun rise over fields of golden grain. 400,000 people lived on this world. Farmers, teachers, doctors, children, people who had never known war. She would do everything in her power to keep it that way. "Ma'am," her lieutenant, a young man named Dong, approached with a tablet. "The evacuation schedule is ready. We can have the first transports loaded by tomorrow." Bai took the tablet and scrolled through the plans. Women and children first, then the elderly, then essential workers. The math was cold and simple. They could not save everyone if they came early. They could only save as many as possible. "Good work," she said. "Begin the announcement, calm and clear, no fear." "Yes, ma'am," Dong hesitated. "My family is here, my parents, my sister." "I know," Bai met his eyes. "Get them on the first transport." "What about you?" "I stay, someone has to." She spent the rest of the day organizing. Defense positions were mapped. Weapons were distributed to those who could use them. Underground shelters were inspected and stocked with supplies. By evening, the colony looked the same as always, but beneath the surface, everything had changed. That night, a woman came to the defense headquarters. Her name was Ha, and she was an engineer who had helped build half the structures in the colony. She was 35, with calloused hands and oil stains on her clothes that never quite washed out. "I want to help," she said. Bai looked up from her desk. "The evacuation transports leave tomorrow. Your skills would be valuable on the inner worlds." "I am not leaving. This may become a war zone." Pulled up a chair and sat down without being invited. "I know, that is why I am staying. You need defenses built. Real defenses, not the basic walls we have now. I can design them. I can build them. I can make this colony a fortress." Bai studied her for a long moment. "Why?" "Because I was born here," said simply. "My parents are buried here. Every building I have ever made stands on this soil. If they want it, they can pay for it in blood." Something passed between the two women. Understanding, respect, the kind of bond that forms when people face the darkness together. "Show me what you have in mind," Bai said. They worked through the night. Designs were clever, using the terrain itself as a weapon. Narrow passes that would funnel attackers into kill zones. Hidden positions that could strike from unexpected angles. Underground tunnels connecting every defensive point. It would take weeks to build, but if they had those weeks, Haven 7 would not fall easily. Back on Earth, Admiral met with his senior staff. Among them was Dr. One, a military historian who had spent his life studying human warfare. He was old and thin, with glasses that he constantly adjusted, but his mind was sharper than anyone in the room. "Tell me about those," said. One activated a display showing fleet movements. They attack in swarms, hundreds of small ships supported by larger carriers. They rely on numbers to overwhelm enemy defenses. Once they achieve local superiority, they land ground forces and crush resistance through sheer mass. Weaknesses. Several. One highlighted different parts of the display. Their command structure is rigid. If you destroy their carrier ships, the smaller vessels lose coordination. They have no concept of strategic retreat. Once committed to an attack, they press forward until victory or death. And they have never faced an enemy that fights the way humans fight. Leaned forward, explain. They have conquered 12 species. All of them fought defensively. They built walls and hoped the swarm would break against them. Some lasted longer than others, but all fell eventually. One removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Humans do not fight this way. We attack. We deceive. We sacrifice pieces to win the game. We do not wait for the enemy to come to us. We go to them. What do you recommend? One put his glasses back on. Let them think they are winning. Let them commit their forces to the colonies. And while they are busy there, hit them where they do not expect it. Their supply lines, their staging areas, there. The room fell silent. Attacking there was not a defensive action. It was total war, the kind of war humanity had sworn to leave behind. Nodded slowly. Prepare the plans, all of them. We will hope for the best and prepare for the worst. 2 weeks later, the worst arrived. Intelligence reported that the fleet had begun moving, not in 90 days, not in 60, now. Received the news without expression. He had expected this. They were confident in their strength and saw no reason to wait. They wanted to catch humanity unprepared. They had failed. He opened a channel to every ship in the human fleet. His voice was calm and clear. This is Admiral, they are moving early. They think they have surprised us. They are wrong. Every ship, every soldier, every civilian who stays behind has a role to play. We did not ask for this war. We offered peace and they refused. Now we will teach them why humanity stopped fighting. He paused, letting his words sink in. We stopped because we were too good at it, and now they will learn what that means. All ships execute Plan Anvil. It is time. Across human space, engines roared to life. Ships that had been waiting in the darkness began to move. On Haven 7, Captain Shin looked up at the stars and saw the first flashes of distant drives. They had made their second mistake. They thought early action would give them advantage. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed. A reason to stop holding back. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel like a swarm of angry insects. 800 warships filled the space around Haven 7, their hulls dark and sharp against the stars. Behind them came the troop carriers, each one holding thousands of warriors ready to land and conquer. Stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the human colony rotate slowly below. The planet was green and blue, rich with the resources his people needed. Soon it would belong to the Dominion. Soon the soft humans would learn their place in the galaxy. Human defenses detected, his tactical officer reported. 47 ships, mostly light cruisers and defense platforms. Clicked his mandibles in amusement. 47 ships against 800. This would not be a battle, it would be an execution. Signal the humans, he commanded. Give them one chance to surrender. I want them to know we offered mercy before we destroyed them. The message was sent. The response came quickly. Lieutenant Commander Oh Junho appeared on the. He was young for his rank, with sharp eyes and a slight smile that did not match the situation. Behind him, his bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. Ambassador, Junho said, thank you for the offer, we decline. You cannot win, replied. You are outnumbered 20-1. Your colony has no major defenses, be reasonable. Junho's smile widened slightly. You know, my grandmother told me stories about our ancestors. They fought a war once on Earth, a small country, outnumbered, and everyone expected them to fall in weeks. Your stories do not interest me. They held for years, they won, not because they had more soldiers or better weapons, because they understood something their enemies did not. Junho leaned forward. Numbers do not win wars, Ambassador. Will does. He cut the transmission. Felt a moment of irritation. These humans talked too much. It was time to teach them silence. All ships, he ordered, begin the attack. The fleet surged forward in a massive wave. This was how they had conquered 12 species. Overwhelming force, applied without mercy. The human ships would be swept aside like leaves in a storm. The first wave of fighters screamed toward the human defensive line. Junho watched them come on his tactical display, counting silently. 300 fighters, then 500, then 800. They were committing everything to the first strike, just as the human analysts had predicted. All squadrons, Junho said calmly, execute pattern Sigma. The human ships did not meet the attack head-on. Instead, they scattered, each vessel moving in a different direction. To them, it looked like panic. Their fighters pursued, breaking formation to chase the fleeing humans. They flew straight into the trap. Hidden among the asteroids at the edge of the system, Admiral watched the battle unfold. His main fleet was invisible, running silent with all emissions suppressed. They had no idea they were there. Fighters are entering the kill zone, his tactical officer reported. Wait said. The pressed deeper, convinced they were winning. Their rigid tactics demanded they pursue until the enemy was destroyed. They did not understand the concept of bait. Now said. Across the asteroid field, weapon platforms that had been placed weeks ago came to life. Missiles launched from a dozen different directions. The scattered human ships suddenly reversed course, catching the fighters between two forces. The first engagement lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, 300 fighters had been destroyed. Human losses were 12 ships. Stared at the tactical display in disbelief. This was not possible. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to crumble. Carrier group forward, he ordered. Launch all remaining fighters, crush them. The battle expanded. More ships joined the fight and more humans fell. But for every human ship destroyed, 5 vessels were lost. The humans did not fight like prey. They fought like predators, striking and retreating, drawing the into ambush after ambush. On Haven 7, Captain Shinbai watched the lights of battle flash across the night sky. Beside her, Ha finished the last of the defensive preparations. Trenches had been dug. Weapons had been placed. The golden fields were now a maze of hidden positions and deadly traps. They are coming, Bai said quietly. Even as the space battle continued, began descending through the atmosphere. Hundreds of them, carrying thousands of warriors. They could not wait for total space superiority. They needed ground victory to prove their dominance. The first landed in a field outside the main settlement. Warriors poured out, their 4 arms carrying weapons that could cut through steel. They advanced toward the human positions, expecting to find farmers and civilians cowering in fear. They found something else. The first volley came from hidden positions on 3 sides. Warriors fell by the dozens. They regrouped and charged, but the narrow approaches funneled them into killing grounds exactly as had designed. Bai commanded from a bunker near the front line. Her voice was steady on the radio, directing fire, shifting defenders, plugging gaps before they could form. She had trained her whole career for a moment she hoped would never come. Now that it was here, she found a strange calm within herself. They kept coming. More landed. More warriors joined the assault. They pushed through the outer defenses by sheer weight of numbers, taking losses that would have broken any other species. But they did not break the humans. In the streets of the settlement, the fighting became close and desperate. Warriors found themselves facing not just soldiers but civilians who had chosen to stay. Old men with hunting rifles, young women with improvised weapons, children who ran messages through tunnels too small for to follow. Fought alongside Bai when the enemy reached the inner walls. She was not a soldier, but she knew every building, every alley, every hidden passage. She led counterattacks that struck them from directions they had thought were secure. Why do they not run? An officer asked through the communication link. We have killed hundreds, they should break. Then kill thousands, replied. They are only humans. But even as he said it, doubt crept into his mind. The space battle was turning against him. The ground assault was stalling, and reports were coming in from other systems. Human ships had been spotted near supply lines, near staging areas. Near space. Admiral's fleet emerged from hiding as they committed their reserves to the Haven 7 battle. The human dreadnoughts were few in number but heavily armed. They struck the carrier ships that controlled the fighter swarms. One by one, the carriers died, and the coordination collapsed. Pull back, ordered, all ships defensive formation. But the humans did not let them pull back. They pursued, pressing the advantage, attacking with a ferocity that they had never experienced. This was not the behavior of prey. This was the behavior of a species that had spent thousands of years learning how to destroy its enemies. The Battle of Haven 7 ended at dawn. They held a small foothold on the planet's surface, but their fleet had been cut in half. Human losses were significant but sustainable. More importantly, the galaxy was watching. Stood alone on his damaged flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed his ruined fleet. He had expected an easy victory. He had received a lesson. "Sir," his communications officer said hesitantly, "we are receiving messages from the... They want to know why we have not won yet." Did not answer. He was thinking about the young human commander who had quoted his grandmother, about the soldiers who had died rather than retreat, about the civilians who had fought like warriors. The humans had tried to warn him. They had shown him their history, offered him peace, given him every chance to avoid this. He had not listened. Now he understood why they had tried so hard to stop this war, not because they feared it, because they knew exactly what they could do. 3 weeks after the Battle of Haven 7, the staging world of 3 burned. Admiral watched from the bridge of his flagship as human bombers completed their runs over the military installations below. Fuel depots exploded in chains of fire. Shipyards collapsed into twisted metal. Supply warehouses that would have fed a dozen invasion fleets were now nothing but ash. They had not expected this. They had concentrated their forces on attacking human colonies. They had left their rear areas defended only by token garrisons, confident that the soft humans would never dare strike at territory. They were learning how wrong they had been. "Orbital bombardment complete," the tactical officer reported. "Ground forces are securing the spaceport." "Casualties?" asked. "Minimal. The garrison surrendered after the first hour." Nodded. He had given orders to accept surrenders whenever possible. War was necessary, but cruelty was not. The humans were fighting to win, not to exterminate. Some of his officers had questioned this. They had shown no mercy in their attacks on human colonies. Why should humans show mercy in return? Had answered simply, "Because we are not them. The moment we become them, we lose something more important than any battle." The fall of 3 sent shockwaves through the Dominion. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy who did not just defend. The humans attacked. They moved through space like ghosts, appearing where they were not expected, destroying what could not be replaced, and vanishing before they could respond. Supply lines collapsed. Communication relays went dark. Fleets that had been sent to conquer human worlds found themselves cut off, unable to receive reinforcements or supplies. On Haven 7, watched his army slowly starve. Captain Shin Bai had held the line for 3 weeks. Her forces were exhausted. Ammunition was running low. Every day brought new casualties, but every day also brought news of human victories across the galaxy. The tide was turning. "We have captured another group of prisoners," Lieutenant Dong reported. "What should we do with them?" "Feed them," Bai said. "Treat their wounds, put them with the others." Dong hesitated. "Ma'am, our own supplies are limited. They killed dozens of our people yesterday. Why should we waste resources on them?" Bai looked up from her maps. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and her uniform was stained with dirt and blood, but her voice was firm. "Because they are prisoners, not enemies. Because we are human beings, not monsters. Because when this war ends, someone will have to rebuild, and that will be easier if we have not given in to hatred." She returned to her maps. "Feed them, that is an order." Ha witnessed something strange that afternoon. A group of wounded prisoners were being treated in the colony hospital, alongside wounded human soldiers. They watched with confusion as human doctors worked to save their lives. One warrior, his arm badly damaged, asked a nurse why she was helping him. He had killed humans just days before. Why would they heal him now? The nurse, an elderly woman named Miran, did not stop working as she answered. "Because you are hurt, because I can help, because that is what we do. But we are your enemy. You were our enemy, now you are our patient. She finished bandaging his wound and moved to the next bed. When you are healed, you will be our prisoner. After the war, maybe you will be our neighbor. That is how it works. They did not understand. In their culture, enemies were destroyed. Showing mercy was showing weakness. But the humans did not seem weak. They fought with terrible effectiveness. They had broken the war machine, and yet they still healed their enemies. It was a contradiction that made no sense. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Sung was having similar conversations. He had spent the weeks of war reaching out to neutral species, explaining humanity's position, building alliances that would shape the post-war galaxy. "You surprised us," admitted Ambassador of the Federation. Her species resembled tall birds with feathers that changed color with their emotions. Right now, they were a troubled gray. "We expected you to surrender. Instead, you are winning." "We tried to avoid this," Sung said. "We offered everything reasonable to prevent bloodshed. They refused. And now you will destroy them. Take their worlds as they try to take yours." Sung shook his head. "That is not our goal. We fight to stop the threat, not to become a threat ourselves. When they are ready to make peace, we will make peace." His feathers flickered with uncertainty. "How can you show such restraint after what they did to your people?" "Because restraint is not weakness. It is the hardest kind of strength." Sung leaned forward. "They think we avoid war because we are afraid. They are wrong. We avoid war because we remember what we are capable of. Every human carries the weight of our history, the wars we fought, the crimes we committed, the millions we killed." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We learned from that darkness. We swore never to return to it. But when someone forces us to fight, we fight with everything we have. And then, when we have won, we put down our weapons and extend our hand. Because the alternative is to become the very thing we fought against." Studied him for a long moment. "You are a strange species." "We know, but we are trying to be better." The conversation with they was repeated in a dozen different forms with a dozen different species. Some were convinced. Others remained skeptical. But all of them were watching. All of them were learning something new about humanity. On the fourth week of the war, the human fleet reached space. Not to invade, not to conquer, but to deliver a message. Admiral's armada appeared in orbit around the hundreds of ships, bristling with weapons that could reduce cities to glass. The defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were outnumbered and, for the first time in their history, the Dominion faced the possibility of extinction. Looked at the planet below. Billions of lived there. Civilians, children, beings who had never asked for this war. He thought about the dead on Haven 7, the destroyed colonies, the families torn apart. He could end it all with a single order. Turn the into a memorial to human vengeance. Make sure no other species ever threatened humanity again. The thought lasted exactly 1 second. Then he pushed it away. "Open a communication channel," he said. "Broadcast to the entire planet." His face appeared on screens across the billions of eyes watched as the human admiral spoke. "People of the Dominion, I am Admiral of the United Human Federation. Your government started this war. Your fleets attacked our homes. Your soldiers killed our people." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We have the power to end your civilization today. We choose not to use it. Instead, we offer you this. Surrender your military forces. Accept responsibility for this war. And begin the work of building a peace that will last." The message continued, outlining the terms: demilitarization, reparations, international oversight, harsh terms but not impossible ones. "You have 24 hours to respond," concluded. "We hope you choose wisely. We have shown you what humans can do when forced to fight. Now we will show you what we can do when allowed to build." The transmission ended. The fleet waited. And on the A species that had only known conquest began to consider something they had never imagined. The possibility of surrender. The possibility of peace. The possibility that they had been wrong about humans all along. The surrender came at dawn on the human. It was a poetic coincidence that no one had planned, but everyone remembered. Ambassador Sung stood in the same great hall of the Galactic Council where, 3 months earlier, he had been given an ultimatum. The stone floor was the same. The towering ceiling was the same, but everything else had changed. Walked slowly toward the central platform. He was smaller now somehow, not physically, but in the way he carried himself. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been exhaustion or might have been shame. Sung watched him approach without expression. Behind him stood Park, Admiral, Captain Shin Bai, and Ha, representatives of humanity's effort. Each of them carried scars from the war, visible and invisible. Around the hall, 40 species watched in silence. They had expected this moment to be triumphant, a display of human dominance. Instead, the atmosphere was solemn. Ambassador said. His voice came through the translator flat and defeated. The Dominion accepts the terms of surrender. Our fleets will stand down. Our weapons will be surrendered. We submit to the judgment of the human government. He paused and something flickered in his compound eyes. Not defiance, something else. I must ask one question, he continued. For myself, if not for my people, why did you not destroy us? You had the power, you had the right by any measure of war. Ours was defenseless. You could have ended the forever. The hall fell absolutely silent. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Sung did not speak immediately. He looked at for a long moment, then at the assembled species, then at his own people. Because we are not conquerors, he said finally. We are not monsters. We are not the things we could become if we let our worst instincts guide us. He stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and. You asked me once why humans avoid war. I told you it was because we understood the cost, but that was only part of the answer. He gestured to the humans behind him. Captain Shin held Haven 7 against your armies for 3 weeks. She could have ordered her people to give no quarter, to kill every soldier they captured. Instead, she fed your wounded and treated your prisoners with dignity. Bai stood straight, her face unreadable. Beside her, who had fought in the streets of her own city, nodded slowly. Admiral could have bombarded you, Sung continued. He could have avenged every human who died in this war with fire from orbit. Instead, he offered you a choice. Remained still, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes met without hatred. We avoid war because we know what we become when we fight. We become efficient. We become ruthless. We become everything that made our own history a nightmare of blood and suffering. Sung's voice grew quieter but no less firm. And then, when the fighting is over, we have to live with what we did. We have to look in the mirror and recognize the face staring back. He reached out and, to the shock of the entire hall, placed his hand on shoulder. We choose mercy not because you deserve it. Many would say you do not. We choose it because we deserve it. Because every time we extend our hand instead of our fist, we prove that we are more than the darkness in our past. We prove that we have learned, that we can be better. Stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. In his entire life, no enemy had ever touched him except to kill. This is your chance, Sung said. Not to be conquered, but to be changed. To learn what we learned. To become something more than you were. He released and stepped back. The terms of surrender are harsh but fair. You will pay for what you did, but you will also have the opportunity to rebuild. We will help you if you let us. Not as masters and servants, but as former enemies who have chosen a different path. Council Arbiter rose from her seat, her ancient voice filling the hall. This is unprecedented. The victor offers reconstruction to the defeated. Is this truly the will of humanity? Stepped forward, she was no longer just an aide. The war had changed her into something more, a witness, a voice. 3 months ago, Ambassador called us prey, she said. He said we did not understand strength. He was right about one thing. We understand strength differently than the. She looked around the hall at the assembled species. Strength is not just the power to destroy. Any species can destroy. Strength is the power to choose, to hold back when you could strike, to build when you could burn, to forgive when you could hate. Her eyes returned to, "We fought your war, we won, and now we are choosing to end the cycle, not because we are weak, because we are strong enough to make a different choice." The signing of the surrender took less than an hour. The ceremonies that followed lasted days. But the moment that everyone remembered, the image that spread across the galaxy and changed how every species thought about humanity, came at the very end. As the formal events concluded, approached Sung privately. The ambassador looked broken, his certainty shattered by events he could not explain. "I do not understand your species," he admitted. "You fight like demons. You show mercy like saints. You remember your past but do not repeat it. How do you hold all of these things inside you?" Sung considered the question. "We do not hold them inside us. They fight within us every day. The capacity for terrible violence and the capacity for great compassion. Neither one defeats the other. We simply choose, moment by moment, which one to follow. And if you choose wrong, then we learn, we remember, and we try again." Sung smiled slightly. "Humanity is not a finished product, Ambassador. We are a work in progress. Every generation tries to be better than the last. Sometimes we succeed. Sometimes we fail, but we never stop trying." Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he extended one of his clawed hands. Sung took it. Far away on Haven 7, Captain Shin stood in the rebuilt town square. The war had ended only days ago, but already construction crews were working to repair the damage. Humans and prisoners worked side by side, lifting beams and clearing rubble. Ha approached her with 2 cups of tea. "Strange sight, is it not? A month ago we were killing each other." Bai took the cup and watched a worker help a human child carry a basket of supplies. "Not as strange as I expected. People adapt, even to peace." "Do you think it will last?" Bai sipped her tea. "Maybe, maybe not, but we gave them a chance. We gave ourselves a chance. That is more than most species get." In the Galactic Council, the assembled ambassadors were still processing what they had witnessed. The humans had won a war without becoming tyrants. They had shown strength without cruelty. They had offered their enemies a future instead of a grave. Ambassador of the Federation approached as the delegations prepared to leave. "Your species has taught us something today," she said. Her feathers were a thoughtful blue. "Something important." "What is that?" "That the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not a weapon or a fleet." Tilted her head, studying with curious eyes. "It is a species that has looked into the abyss of its own nature, seen the monster within, and chosen to be something else." Nodded slowly. "We are still choosing every day." "Then the galaxy should hope you keep making the right choice." Made a gesture of respect. "Because now we all know what happens when you make the other one." She turned and left, her feathers shifting through a spectrum of colors that could not read. That night, Sung stood alone on a balcony overlooking the great hall. The stars were bright overhead, scattered across the darkness like promises waiting to be kept. Found him there an hour later. "Everyone is asking for you. The victory celebrations are starting." "I will be there." He did not turn around. "I was just thinking about what happens next." "We won. The war is over." "This war is over." He finally looked at her. "But there will be others. Other species who see our wealth and want to take it. Other conflicts that cannot be resolved with words. The question is whether we will remember this lesson when that time comes." "Do you think we will?" Sung was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and some of the weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. "I think we will try, and trying is all anyone can do. He turned and walked back into the light, toward the celebration and the future beyond. Behind him, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small dramas playing out beneath them. But for one moment on one world, a species that had been born in violence had chosen something different. It would not be the last time they had to make that choice. But they had proven they could make it. And that made all the difference.